If you crack first, Dave, it won't make you any less of a man.
I'm nowhere near cracking.
Neither am I, my friend.
Dave. And Matthew, what is it now? For God's sake, no one's smoking, okay? But nothing! You know what we need around here is an anti-whining ordinance. So just sip your sniveling little lip and haul your skinny ass out of here!
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes. And not surprisingly, we expected to hear from Warner Brothers and some of the actors and execs that were, I don't know, kind of called out by Ruby Rose on Instagram within the last few days. We still have not heard from Peter Roth, who would have been the big exec that she called out by name, or Carolyn Dries, the showrunner of Batwoman, who she called out by name. But we did hear from Warner Brothers Television. They had a press release. We also heard from Doug Ray Scott and Cameron Johnson, who responded to the allegations against them personally with respect to the complaints by Ruby Rose and why they left Batwoman to begin with. It sounds like it was kind of an unsafe work environment. There was a lot of injuries on set, including to Ruby Rose themselves. Now, if you look, Ruby Rose showed the receipts. There's videos of the neck surgery. There's x-rays of whatever happened to the disc in her neck. They showed some receipts that there was certainly there was an emergency surgery that they had to undergo. And as far as some of the other allegations that aren't addressed at all, like the emotional blackmail from the studio and the execs on you have to return to work even though you physically don't feel right, or maybe emotionally you're not even ready, or everyone's going to lose their jobs, or you have to record this video since you can't make it to Comic-Con since you just had neck surgery. If you don't do it, we won't tell anyone why you no-showed, and they'll all just assume that you kind of bounced out and flaked out and didn't care about the fans of the show that you're about to announce. So none of that's really addressed, but this is the actual response from Warner Brothers Television. Obviously, probably went through the lawyers and all that. Despite the revisionist history that Ruby Rose is now sharing online aimed at producers, the casting crew, the network, and the studio, the truth is that Warner Brothers Television had decided not to exercise its option to engage Ruby for season 2 of Batwoman based on multiple complaints about workplace behavior that were extensively reviewed and handled privately out of respect for all concerned. So according to Warner Brothers, they are very comfortable with the decision they made not to pick up the option for Ruby Rose on season 2 of Batwoman, even though they were the starring character and the lead actor in the series, based on multiple complaints about behavior within the workplace that they say they went and investigated privately, and apparently were able to validate, or they were reliable complaints, and it warranted them moving on with a new actor and a new character in the starring role. There have been a few reasons given initially why Ruby Rose ended up leaving Batwoman. Of course, now they've come back and said it was due to an unsafe work environment, emotional manipulation, the behavior of some of the execs, and a few of the actors not being extensively professional. Although it certainly sounds like, from Warner Brothers' point of view, they weren't professional either. There have been rumblings in the past before this came out from Ruby Rose themselves that there was something that happened, that it wasn't like a mutual parting of the ways, that there was some contention there. In 2020, an anonymous source close to the Batwoman production claimed it wasn't 100% her decision, being Ruby Rose. It was a breakup. She wasn't happy working on the show. And did that make her fun to work with? No. So everyone decided it would be in their best interest of the show and for all concerned if they parted ways. It just wasn't a good fit. Now, prior to this, Ruby Rose really had only worked on movies. I believe they did a few episodes of Orange is the New Black, but certainly hadn't done a lot of television projects. Now, those, from what I understand, are a lot more intensive and take a lot more time as far as your schedule and whatnot. Perhaps Ruby Rose wasn't prepared for the transition from movie actor to lead actress in a big television show. We also know, of course, that the pandemic was kicking off at the end of the shooting. It ended up cutting off a couple of episodes. They weren't able to do a crossover with Supergirl that they had planned to do. It sounds like there's a good chance that Ruby Rose was not the easiest person to get along with or deal with on the set of Batwoman. I haven't really confirmed this. There haven't been a whole lot of people speaking out about this, especially not on the record, other than a couple of the actors that were completely were specifically mentioned by name, which I'll get to here in a few seconds. But whether someone is a jerk on set, they're difficult to deal with, whether they're moody, whether they had an unflattering personality as you dealt with them on a day-to-day basis, it doesn't negate the allegations that were made, which really aren't addressed here, that the workplace environment was unsafe. Ruby Rose had a pretty severe neck injury, had to have emergency surgery. There was another, an assistant to the production that was absolutely paralyzed. That is confirmed during the production. And from everything that I've read, yes, the CW did claim that the woman that was paralyzed, it was her fault because she was on a phone when she was hit on the head with something. Now, I wasn't able to verify the stunt actor that was had third-degree burns and whose skin was falling off. But it sounds like, there were issues with safety on the set, and none of that really is addressed here. As far as the emotional manipulation, claiming that, basically saying, Ruby Rose, if you do not come back to work when we say you have to come back to work, whether you feel physically fit or emotionally ready or not, everyone's going to lose their job, essentially putting all the pressure of everyone's ability to make ends meet on Ruby Rose's shoulder. Or if you don't show up at the Comic-Con or record this video about the premiere of Batwoman season 1, we're not going to tell people why you're not there. And we're going to give out the impression that you just decided to know about on the fans, that you don't care about them, kind of thing, and basically try to besmirch your reputation. None of that really is addressed here, but for all intents and purposes, at this point, it's all really he said, she said. Ruby Rose has gone out there, changed their story, which, initially Ruby Rose kind of went along with it. It was the pandemic that that forced them to leave the Batwoman project. Although in 2020, I believe in one interview, Ruby Rose actually claimed that a latex allergy might have been one of the lead reasons why they ended up stepping away from the project. So there have been a couple of changing the stories. And we do know that, with all due respect to Warner Brothers Television, in an interview in March 2021, Ruby Rose did say that they were amicable to return to the role of Kate Kane, as long as they didn't step on the toes of the new lead actress. And of course, the role of Kate Kane was eventually recast, and they didn't return. So there are some inconsistencies here. There are certainly some receipts. There are some dates and stories that line up with what Ruby Rose is saying. But obviously the Warner Brothers Television is refuting that. So it really ends up being a he said, she said. Who are you going to believe? Me personally, with what is said, not only by Warner Brothers Television, but by the two actors, which I'm going to talk about here in a second, none of it really refutes what Ruby Rose says are the main issues that were happening on set. That none of that is really addressed here. There probably needs to be an independent investigation. I understand they did an internal private investigation from Warner Brothers. They probably need to bring in an outside party to come in and investigate the claims and really get some people on the record, do some interviews, and find out what exactly happened. Why did these injuries happen? Hey, accidents absolutely, do happen, but it's crazy. Like the main things that Ruby Rose is alleging never really get addressed in any of this. So me personally, I'm still kind of apt to side with Ruby Rose on this one and kind of believe them, because none of it's refuted in here. They don't even address it as far as the television studio themselves. Just because someone's a jerk on set and not easy to deal with doesn't mean that the set was safe, or doesn't mean that they weren't emotionally manipulated. Perhaps that's why they were difficult to deal with. Now, as far as the individual allegations, Doug Ray Scott, who plays Colonel Jacob Kane on Batwoman, fully denies Ruby Rose's claims that he abused women on the set of the CW show. There were some other things about he would leave when he wanted to, or he would come back when he wanted to, kind of keeping his own schedule. This is what Mr. Scott said. Quote, as Warner Brothers Television has stated, they decided not to exercise the option to engage Ruby for season 2 of Batwoman based on multiple complaints about her workplace behavior. I absolutely and completely refute the defamatory and damaging claims made against me by her. They are entirely made up and never happened. And that is what Doug Ray Scott has to say. Now, will anyone come out to support, on the record, to support Ruby Rose's claims, that were associated with the production? I don't imagine they're going to do this private investigation that I personally feel is warranted. Will anyone come out here and inside with Ruby Rose on what she claims or how she claims Doug Ray Scott behaved and how they were to deal with on set during season 1 of Batwoman? Unless somebody really comes out, it's hard to come out of this one. It really did. When I read the initial claims, I was like, this stuff just sounds like they didn't really like each other. Also, do you guys remember who Doug Ray Scott is? This is like, he gave us one of the greatest gifts in comic book movie history. He was initially cast as Wolverine in X-Men. Did you remember that? And then I think 10 days before their filming was going to start, he said he decided he was going to go do the Mission Impossible 2 movie with Tom Cruise. And we ended up getting Hugh Jackman. Hugh Jackman would not be one of the biggest movie stars in the world if it weren't for Doug Ray Scott. So he's got that going for him. Well, at least he gave us Hugh Jackman. As far as the allegations for Ruby Rose, it sounds like he vehemently denies it, and it's going to be up to the interpretation of the receiver on this one. Do you believe Ruby, or do you believe Doug Ray Scott? Unless someone comes out and is able to confirm or refute any of these allegations, it's really, like I said, more he said, she said, and really judging by the allegations that were on the Instagram post that they made, it sounded like there was some type of personal animosity between the two. And the allegations levied against Doug Ray Scott and Cameron Johnson, which I'm going to get to here in a second, really were kind of flimsy. It was like, okay, you didn't like each other. It's up to the production to make sure that he gets the set on time. You know what I mean? Kind of thing. As far as Cameron Johnson, who plays Luke Fox on Batwoman, he actually posted his rebuttal to Ruby Rose's allegations on Twitter. And it's a 3-part Twitter thread. The first part actually is the rebuttal. The second parts are just a little bit of follow-up. I'm not going to actually read those. He says, Bat fam, I couldn't go the whole day without saying something. I love y'all. Don't think I haven't seen all the love today. But yeah, fam, she was fired. And it is very hard to be fired when you're the lead. Imagine what you have to do for that to happen. Cameron Johnson makes a pretty good point here. Ruby Rose was the lead actor of Batwoman, the face of the franchise. And after the first season, it sounds like there was it wasn't a mutual breakup. It sounded like Warner Brothers Television, according to them, decided not to pick up the option for season 2. Warner Brothers Television must have had a few allegations that really held water for them to take that kind of leap. You don't normally see the lead actor replaced after season 1, unless it was planned, obviously Ned Stark, but he was supposed to die. So I don't know Cameron Johnson, but he makes a hell of a good point right there. It's hard to refute that one. And we do see that kind of off the record, we are seeing some of the people associated with the production kind of taking the side of Warner Brothers Television. And though there's only one person that I've really seen, and it's not all that detailed because they weren't actually there when it was being produced. The one person that's really showing support for Ruby Rose is Ray Fisher, who you could say is biased and has an axe to grind, who has their own similar complaints levied against the studio for their role in the filming of the Justice League. Sounds like it was much worse under the Justice League. So you have to kind of take that one with a grain of salt. And obviously, even if Ray Fisher was still associated with studio, he wasn't on that television show. It's not like he was there to witness any of this thing. So really, when you take the support that Ray Fisher is throwing Ruby Rose's way, it's more emotional support, or, just, hey, I've got your back. But he really can't back up anything. And we really do need people to come out. I will give credit to Ruby Rose. They certainly detailed their injuries via x-ray. We got some videos and whatnot. As far as the claims of emotional blackmail, hey, that's more in the he said, she says. Accusations of a dangerous working condition. Hey, there were injuries. Ruby Rose had to have emergency surgery. There is a person paralyzed because of the production of Batwoman. Now, whether that person would still be walking today if they had shut down Batwoman at the same time they had shut down the other CW DC shows in the Arrowverse, I don't know the exact dates of, I could probably investigate a little bit more, but there's some validity to a lot of the claims that they're making, because they provided some receipts, and there's certainly reports that these things happened on set. Now, they could have been a complete coincidence, could have been accidents, but you can only have so many accidents before it kind of becomes a trend. We are still waiting, as I mentioned earlier, from Peter Roth, the former head of Warner Brothers Television, and Caroline Dries, the showrunner for Batwoman, who apparently they did not have a great relationship with Ruby Rose. Sounds like there are more than just the two of them that did not have a great relationship. Cameron Johnson absolutely makes a good point. Getting fired as the lead of a show is kind of hard to do. So, I don't know. Where do you guys stand? I'm personally still putting my weight behind Ruby Rose. None of what was been presented as far as the counterpoint from Warner Brothers Television, Doug Ray Scott, or Cameron Johnson refutes any of the major allegations levied by Ruby Rose. And they did show enough receipts, in my opinion, to kind of at least validate that these things need to be investigated by somebody other than the internal investigation team. We need to get a third party on this and see if there is really an issue on there, because people were hurt, and this is serious business. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. I would appreciate it very much. It helps us attract more views for the channel. Subscribe for future commentary, comic book news, and reviews. And don't forget to ring the bell for notifications. If you want to talk comics, movies, and much, much more, you can follow me on Twitter at Wes_from_TC. With that, Salamat Po, and I'm out.